Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Nick Blumberg. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at. Some local officials are demanding more accountability for federal immigration agents. A push for city ethics reforms in the wake of some high-profile corruption convictions. The uncertain future of a student group providing sex education and contraception. And Chicago's newest avian icons have names. We introduce them to you and the history of piping plovers in the city. First off tonight, some local leaders want Chicago to ban federal immigration agents from wearing masks and require they provide some identification. The call comes as some Illinois Congress members are pushing for national legislation along those same lines. Immigrant advocates have reported seeing some ICE agents wearing masks and refusing to identify themselves during raids, which they say creates fear and hinders accountability. Joining us now to discuss more is Leonardo Quintero, chair of the 12th Police District Council on the city's Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. We should note that we also reached out to ICE, but they did not respond. Leonardo Quintero, welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
So as these immigration enforcements have been pretty significantly stepped up recently, what are some of the ways people have seen agents concealing their identity?
Yeah, so they'll come into neighborhoods or outside of the courthouse, the immigration courthouse, and be in full mask, in no insignia, no names, no badges. They pull up in tinted cars, usually vans or trucks, and they just come in and don't say anything to anyone. People ask them who they are, where they're representing, what organization, what their name is, and they just refuse or are aggressive towards people, pushing them and refusing to answer.
Well, as we mentioned, some members of Congress are pushing for legislation that would require ICE agents to identify themselves. Why do you want to see local rules in place as well? Why is that important for you?
Yeah, so I'm grateful that, Delia Ramirez, Chuy Garcia, and other Congress people put forth the No Secret Police Act here in Illinois for everybody, as well as, New York and California pushing the MELT Act. But I do think it's important for us to ensure that we are attacking this at every level. So whether it's municipal, state, we need to make sure that they know that we are going to be here and fight for our people, for our residents, and that there is no room for hostility. There is no room for fear. We want to make sure that our citizens and our residents understand that they have a safe place here.
Well, and it sounds like that's the concern that folks have, that this isn't necessarily sort of a legitimate law enforcement action, that it is intended to intimidate. Is that fair to say?
I believe so. I 100% think that this is done with the intent to scare people, to push people into either self-reporting, or whatever it is. I've talked to a lot of community residents who are currently fearful to just go to the store, go out to work, and I think that this tactic is very intentional. I want to ensure people understand that we are here to fight for them, whether it is on a city level, on a state level, or on a federal level.
Well, federal officials have said agents are concerned about them being doxxed, about their families, having their public, personal information revealed publicly, and that's the reason why they may want to partially sort of cover up. What's your reaction to that justification?
Yeah, I do not see it as doxing. I see it as 100% transparency. We need to have that. They are federal employees, similar to the person that works at the DMV, the person that works anywhere else. They are government employees. And because of that, we need to have transparency, and there needs to be levels of accountability. If they are masking themselves, if they are hiding themselves, then there is no room for that accountability to take place.
Well, given that these agents are working for the federal government, how do you envision sort of local regulations being enforced should they go into place?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of pushback, and the pushback comes from, federal law trumps any local law, and I understand that. However, there is no law in place federally that says that agents can wear these masks, or that it's part of their uniform. So if we do something locally, they would have to push back on us, and then we would be able to take it to the courts and be able to have a more fruitful conversation in the courts and be able to fight for our residents.
Well, you and some of your colleagues sent a letter to Mayor Johnson, to Police Superintendent Snelling, calling for this measure, to prevent masked agents. Have you heard back from them at all?
We have not heard back, and it's pretty disappointing. I would want to encourage all Chicago residents to reach out to the alders, to the mayor's office and to ensure that we do have some type of response to this. We've seen other cities come forth, other mayors come forth and put different types of, safety rails for this. And we want to make sure that Chicago also puts those, because at the moment we have the most progressive mayor that we've ever had. We have the most progressive city council that we've ever had. So we need to act like it.
Yeah, I mean, are you surprised by that at all? Given how out front Mayor Johnson has been pushing back on the Trump administration, pushing back on some of these enforcement actions.
It is surprising. And I also understand the fact that, we haven't been here before. This is unprecedented times. These things have not happened. And people don't know how to react to fascism, how to react to authoritarianism. And I personally think we need to attack it head on. We need to make sure that locally we're okay, state, federal, and that there's measures of accountability across the board.
Well, you mentioned alder people. Have you had any sorts of conversations with members of the city council about this issue?
Yeah, I was actually talking because there was also an incident that occurred June 4th or 6th, I'm not sure exactly, and that happened on South Michigan, where people were being entrapped to come into the court, and then they were being kidnapped and taken by masked agents. In that event, in that situation, alder people were also involved, as well as community members, different types of organizations and advocacy groups, and just community members. And we've been able to talk to Alderman Vasquez, who's been pretty open about calling for an investigation of what happened and what resources were used by CPD. And that's just another layer, right? We need to ensure that we are transparent and accountable across the board through everything that is happening, because these are a lot of actions and it's easy to get overwhelmed. But as representatives, as electeds, we need to ensure that we are on the front lines pushing these types of different changes.
Are there, sort of in the draft plan here, essentially, are there sort of specific requirements about identification that you want to see put into place?
I mean, the goal is to abolish ICE in my situation. However, understanding that there's levels of accountability and things that we have to go through, I would love to just have insignias, have names, and have no masks, right? That is the bare minimum that we are asking for. We're asking for accountability, transparency. I don't think those are two measures that are too high to climb and too hard to get over. So I do want to ensure, again, push that, our local officials can join us in this fight.
Well, and you mentioned, folks not having those insignia, the vehicles perhaps not being marked. Are you concerned about people potentially sort of posing as federal agents who aren't?
Yes, and we've seen it happen already, whether it is abuse to women, and also shootings that have happened, homicides that have happened. There has been several cases across the states that have shown that this leaves room for that type of action.
What have you and your colleagues been hearing from residents about their concerns over these tactics?
People are scared. People are fearful, and we need to, they pay their taxes, they vote for us, and we need to make sure that we are the people on the front lines when it comes to these things. That's why we sent the statement, because we were hearing a lot from our residents, from our constituents. Pilsen also had an incident. Pilsen is part of the 12th district, had an incident where we had 2 people get taken by ICE. And again, people want to feel safe. People want that level of security when they are in their neighborhoods, when they're walking to the store. We shouldn't have to be fearful.
All right, well, I imagine this is a conversation we'll be continuing to keep our eye on, but that's all the time we have for now. Leonardo Quintero, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, could recent high-profile corruption convictions help push along ethics reforms in Chicago? Heather Sharon's here with that story right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The most powerful politicians in Chicago and Illinois history are now both convicted felons. But there's no sign Chicago is actually, finally, really ready for reform. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with a look at the push for reform in the aftermath of the convictions of former Alderman Ed Burke and former House Speaker Michael Madigan. Heather, good to see you. Now, these sorts of high-profile corruption convictions, they typically prompt sort of a flurry of proposals to crack down on loopholes in city ethics laws. Why hasn't that happened this time around?
Well, I spoke with Inspector General Deborah Witzberg, who said that she wasn't certain that the window of opportunity has closed, but she was concerned that it had. And I spoke with her and several other city officials and good government advocates, and they really laid the blame at Mayor Brandon Johnson's feet. He has not made ethics reform a priority, even though the juries in both the Burke and Madigan case heard evidence that they leveraged their elected office for personal gain and basically did so for decades without anyone blowing the whistle on them. The question is, can city officials get in gear before that door fully slams shut?
Well, speaking of the mayor, I mean, after that 5-month delay caused by his objections, City Council's Ethics Committee finally unanimously agreed to give Inspector General Witzberg more power to probe wrongdoing or potential wrongdoing. What could change if this measure gets approval on Wednesday at the City Council?
Well, Inspector General Deborah Witzberg said that she was prevented from really doing robust investigations in cases that could embarrass high-ranking officials like the mayor. She said the city's law department had wanted to sit in investigatory interviews and that they denied her access to sensitive documents. This ordinance that advanced today unanimously would correct those issues, she said, with some exceptions where that information was covered by attorney-client privilege and if the person who is the subject of the probe wants a lawyer from the law department to sit in. She says it's not perfect, but it's progress.
High-ranking city officials have never been embarrassed by investigations. What's the worry there? Now, despite the mayor's reluctance, his hesitancy to focus on ethics reform, he is facing some two very high-profile decisions. What's on his to-do list?
Well, today is the last day for William Conlon to be chair of the Chicago Board of Ethics. He is stepping down after 9 years, which means it is up to the mayor to pick his replacement. But perhaps an even more decision looms by the end of October. The mayor will have to decide to reappoint or not Deborah Witzberg to serve another 4-year term as the city's watchdog. Those two positions really determine how robustly the city's ethics laws, despite their loopholes, are enforced, and it will be up to the mayor to put his stamp on those two agencies.
All right, Heather Sharon, always keeping an eye on things for us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Nick.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's at WTTW.com/news. And we're back with more right after this. A group of DePaul University students are handing out contraception discreetly, just steps away from campus. The Planned Parenthood Generation Action student group delivers birth control supplies and holds sex education talks with their peers. But DePaul formally deactivated the group as a student organization last month, saying the school prohibits the distribution of birth control devices on campus. Joining us now to talk about the group's mission and possible next steps are Maya Roman, a DePaul University student and member of Planned Parenthood Generation Action. We also invited DePaul University to join us, but they declined. They did send us a statement, though, which we will get to shortly. But Maya, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been with the Planned Parenthood Generation Action student group since it began in 2022. Why did the organization get started?
It got started because there was nothing existing as a formally recognized student organization on campus. We came to find out later throughout our journey together that there were, throughout the course of DePaul's history, multiple groups that tried to create reproductive justice organizations, but none of them were official orgs. So I joined the group because I was like, oh, finally, a reproductive justice organization.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, DePaul says they've deactivated this group as a campus organization. In a statement, as we mentioned, there's not necessarily a ban on contraception, but on its distribution. Here's some of that statement. DePaul University has made the decision to deactivate Planned Parenthood Generation Action status as a registered student organization due to its formal affiliation with Planned Parenthood. This step reflects DePaul's responsibility to uphold its Catholic Vincentian values, which do not allow former partnerships with organizations organizations whose core missions are in direct conflict with the teachings of the Catholic Church. We remain committed to supporting student-led dialogue on important issues, including reproductive health. What's your reaction to that statement?
It's not accurate to say that reproductive justice and specifically issues of contraception and abortion don't align with Catholic values. The majority of Catholic women have used some form of contraception at least once in their lives, and the majority of Catholics are pro-choice. So in reality, DePaul is uplifting the minority, not the majority, with their decision.
Well, according to the CDC, STIs, unplanned pregnancies, are particularly common for college-aged folks. There was a 2023 report that found nearly half of all reported cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis were among people aged 15 to 24. What factors do you think contribute to those stats?
A lot. One of the biggest factors is the cost barrier. Contraception is not cheap, especially if you don't have access to insurance. So birth control methods such as the pill are very difficult to get your hands on, especially as a college student. The other one is just overall accessibility. Finding a place nearby to be able to receive those services is very difficult if you're on a campus that prohibits its usage and its distribution. So there is a lot of barriers that occur there. And of course, if you are low income, if you're a person of color, if you are part of the LGBTQ community, you're also at higher risk for these kinds of issues because universities are not providing those services.
Well, what role, to that point, what role do you think institutions like a university should play in addressing sexual health issues?
They should absolutely be having mandatory education as part of it, specifically comprehensive sexual education, not abstinence focus, because that's what the majority of the United States provides, and it's not sustainable, and it's not really accurate to the sexual health experience. And they should also be providing sexual health services, things that are not just reactionary, so STI, HIV testing after it's already occurred, right, but things that actually help prevent it in the first place.
Well, and the people that your organization is working with on campus, the fellow students that you're working with, what sorts of a reaction do you get to them when you have these sort of sex ed talks? What kind of backgrounds did they have in that department?
It's been a huge variety of students. A majority of them have had very little sexual education, at least in the formal sense. They have discovered it on their own via internet and other methods. But in terms of actual education services providing that, it's been very, very little. So they've been really grateful to have a safe location to explore a lot of these topics in a comprehensive manner.
Well, what do you make of the argument that if students want to access certain kinds of reproductive health, that given its stance, DePaul might not be the right school for them? Does that hold water for you?
It doesn't hold water at all for me. The truth is, especially right now in America, your access to a college is really based upon what you can afford. A lot of the people who I know who attend DePaul University attended it because that was the university that provided the most scholarship money. So it was, again, a matter of affordability. And so to take it away and to be like, oh, well, you just shouldn't go here, just doesn't hold any weight to the reality of what a lot of students are going through.
Well, obviously debates over contraception, over sex ed, not new. The Trump administration has opposed access to reproductive health care, as has, the Supreme Court. Do you think those sorts of political stances can have kind of a chilling effect on people seeking out contraception?
Absolutely, especially right now, the country is essentially torn between those that provide access and those that don't. So when we have spaces like campuses where we have so many students coming in from out of state, they're coming in from states that don't provide that access. And colleges are supposed to provide sanctuary and a safe space for students to develop into adults. And instead what we're seeing is that they're also upholding these very harmful techniques that are occurring.
Well, and you've said that you think the administration's stance played a part in DePaul's decision to deactivate your group. Why do you think that is?
It's definitely a personal theory of mine, and it's because of the fact that the Trump administration has really been cracking down on overall reproductive justice access, and specifically access to health care. A lot of universities throughout the country we're seeing are caving and bowing down to the administration's demands, worries over funding and being able to continue as a university. So instead of standing up for their students and upholding the historical right that college campuses have been in terms of activism and organizing, instead we're seeing them begin to kind of bow to demands and let Trump tell them exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, and tell us a little bit more about what happened recently to sort of cause this break with the university.
So we're not entirely sure. To be fair, throughout the entire time we have been an organization, the DePaul administration has told us that they had problems with our affiliation with Planned Parenthood. So this specifically isn't something new, but we have never really organized for an abortion providing service before. We've done a lot of sexual education on campus, and we've done fundraisers and other programs, but our charity ball that occurred this past spring was a direct fundraiser for the Ryan Center, which is the only Southside clinic that provides in-clinic abortions. It spread like wildfire, and unfortunately, DePaul's administration got wind of that.
Well, we've got about 20 seconds left. I know you've got a meeting scheduled with university leadership on Friday. Are you hopeful this group can continue on campus in some form? I
do. I am very hopeful of that, and just without the affiliation.
All right, well, that's where we'll have to leave it, but I imagine this is something else we'll be keeping an eye on. Maya Rahman, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, you might have heard about Chicago's piping plovers, and have you wondered what all the fuss is about? WTTW News explains right after this. Every summer for the past 6 years, Chicagoans have gone plover crazy. We're talking about piping plovers, the endangered birds that have decided to raise their family on the lakefront. 3 new plover chicks hatched last month at Montrose Beach, and they were just named. In Chicago fashion, the city icons are named Ferris, Bean, and Elle. So what's all the fuss about these birds? Here's Patty Wetley in our WTTW News Explains series.
Chicago's lakefront is famously open and free. So why is a prime section of Montrose Beach roped off every summer? Because it's for the birds, literally, the piping plovers. Piping plovers are tiny shorebirds about the size of a smartphone, but a fraction of the weight. There used to be a few thousand of them spread across the entire Great Lakes, but then people took away a lot of the beaches where they lived, building houses, hotels, marinas, and resorts. By 1986, there were only about a dozen piping plover pairs left in the Great Lakes, all of them nesting in Michigan. The future looked so bleak for our feathered friends, they were officially added to the endangered species list. Fast forward to 2019. 2 of these rare creatures, a male and a female, turned up on Montrose Beach. Chicago's birders rejoiced. Huzzah! There hadn't been a nesting pair in Cook County since Harry Truman was president. But against all odds and logic, a pair of plovers had landed on one of the most crowded beaches in Chicago and decided to start a family. Amazing! Maybe a slightly unwise choice on the plovers' part, but amazing. An army of volunteers quickly formed to protect the plovers, who they named Monty and Rose, from beachgoers and other threats. Long story short, the couple, and eventually their chicks, spent the summer charming the pants off Chicagoans before flying south for the winter. And what do you know, like all summer blockbusters, this tale has a sequel. Monty and Rose returned to Montrose to nest again in 2020. Incredibly, they landed in Chicago within hours of each other, despite spending the winter on opposite sides of the Gulf of whatever. The dynamic duo completed the trilogy in 2021, raising a third group of chicks at Montrose. Alas, in 2022, the saga took a tragic turn. Rose never made it back to Chicago, and Monty died of an infection, though some would say it was really of a broken heart. Still, the legacy of these lovebirds lives on, not just in their son Imani, who's also found a mate at Montrose, but in the goodwill these two crazy kids created for their species. Monty and Rose, putting the love in Plover.
And you can watch more of our WTTW News Explains video on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. There you can also find out more about our new friends Ferris, Bean, and Elle. And that's our show for this Monday night. Stay connected with our newsroom by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and a special time, 10:30. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching, stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that contributes to public safety policy and guidelines.